Hello, I'm Ridian. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the show me tell me questions, an important part of your UK driving test. These questions are designed to test your basic knowledge of vehicle safety and maintenance. You'll be asked one tell me question at the very start of your driving test before you begin driving, and one show me question while you're driving. So it's important to feel confident answering both while staying calm and in control. Now don't worry, getting one or both questions wrong won't result in a test fail, but it will count as a driving fault, also known as a minor. And as you probably know, too many minors can still lead to a fail overall, so it's well worth getting these right. Tell me how you would check that the brakes are working before starting a journey. Describe. The brakes should not feel spongy or slack. The brakes should be tested as you set off, and the vehicle should not pull to one side when you apply the foot brake. Tell me where you would find the information for the recommended tyre pressures for this car and how tyre pressures should be checked. So we will get the information for the recommended tyre pressure on the manufacturer's guidebook. We can also find the information on a sticker which is located on the side of the vehicle. You can find this by the door. We would also use a reliable pressure gauge to check the tyre pressure, and we would need to do this when the tyres are cold. Tell me how you would make sure your head restraint is correctly adjusted so it provides the best protection in an event of a crash. The head restraint should be adjusted so the rigid part of the head restraint is at least as high as the eye or top of the ears, and as close to the back of the head as it's comfortable. Tell me how you would check the tyres to ensure that they have sufficient tread depth and that their general condition is safe to use on the road. When we check the tyres, there should be no cuts and bulges. We should have a minimum of 1.6 millimeters of tread depth across the central 3/4 of the breadth of the tyre and around the entire outer circumference of the tyre. Tell me how you would check that the headlights and taillights are working. We would explain that we would operate the switch, or if we have to, turn the ignition on, and then walk around the vehicle and check that the taillights and the headlights are working. Tell me how you would know if there was a problem with your anti-lock braking system. A warning light should illuminate if there is a fault with the anti-lock braking system. Tell me how you would check that direction indicators are working. You would explain that you would switch on your hazard warning lights, then you would walk around the vehicle to check that all the bulbs and all the lights are working. Tell me how you would check that the brake lights are working on this car. You would explain that you would reverse to a reflective surface, a wall or a window, and you would gently apply the foot brake and look at the reflection. If you don't have a reflective surface, you will ask somebody to help. Tell me how you would check the power assisted steering is working before starting a journey. If the steering becomes heavy, the system may not be working properly. Before starting a journey, two simple checks can be made. Gentle pressure on the steering wheel, maintained while the engine is started, should result in a slight but noticeable movement as the system begins to operate. Alternatively, turning the steering wheel just after moving off will give you an immediate indication that the power-assisted steering is functioning. Tell me how you would switch on the rear fog lights and explain when you'd use it. Operate the switch, turn on dipped headlights and ignition if necessary. You would see a light on the dashboard, and we put the fog lights on when visibility is less than 100 meters. Tell me how you would switch on your headlight from dipped to main beam and explain how you would know the main beam is on. We would operate the switch and then we would flick the left stick forward and then we would see a blue icon on the dashboard. Open the bonnet and tell me how you would check that the engine has sufficient oil. So we would identify where the dipstick is, or the oil level indicator, and then we would need to describe that we would take the dipstick out, we would give it a wipe, put it back in, and then we would take it back out again, and we would take a reading from the gauge. We would do this while the engine was cold. Open the bonnet and tell me how you would check that the engine has sufficient engine coolant. We would identify where the coolant is located. We would then lean over and we will look and check at the level markers to see the car has enough coolant. Open the bonnet and tell me how you would check that you have a safe level of hydraulic brake fluid. First, we would need to locate where the hydraulic brake fluid is placed. We would lean over to check and we would look at the markers to see if we have a sufficient level of hydraulic brake fluid. When it's safe to do so, show me how you would wash and clean the rear windscreen. Well, this is where the switch to operate the rear windscreen washer. When it's safe to do so, can you show me how you would wash and clean the front windscreen? This is where the lever is to operate the front windscreen washer. We pull it towards us and it will clean the window. When it's safe to do so, can you show me how you would switch on your dipped headlights? This is where the dipped headlights is located. We would turn it on and then the dipped headlights would come on. When it's safe to do so, show me how you would set the rear demister. This is where the rear demister switch is located. I would press it and then the rear demister would go on, and then I would press it again to switch it off. When it's safe to do so, can you show me how you would operate the horn? I would just gently apply the horn. When it's safe to do so, can you show me how you would demist the front windscreen? This is where the panel is located for you to operate the front demister. We would turn them on and apply high levels of air. When it's safe to do so, show me how you would open and close your side window. You would locate the open the window button, switch, press it down for it to go down, and you press it up for it to go up. And that's it. Now you've got all the show me tell me questions covered and you're one step closer to smashing your driving test. Remember, these questions aren't just for the test, they're about keeping you and others safe on the road every day. So take a bit of time to practice and you'll feel way more confident going into your test.